In this video, we're going to talk about using lists as arrays. Arrays are a very common data type. They're a very common way to store data in just about any computer language. So they're not specific to Python. Now, Python has its own module called arrays, but it's a little bit tricky to use. And another way to do it is to use lists as arrays. And I think it's just a better way, especially for first-year students, to learn about arrays. But you're going to need them. If you move on to any other computer language, Java, C++, C, whatever, any of the Apple languages, arrays, they've just been around forever and they're not going anywhere. Now, what's an array? Imagine an Excel spreadsheet. So for an Excel spreadsheet, you could have a grid with all that data in. It's exactly what an array is. The grade books on CSIU, that's like an array. I have every student and I have all their particular grades for programs and tests and quizzes and labs and things like that. The first array we're going to do is what we would call a one-dimensional array. And it's actually nothing tricky because you already know how to do it. You already know how to do a one-dimensional array because you know how to do lists. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a little program here. This program finds the minimum grade. So maybe we would want to look at somebody's test scores and know, well, what was the lowest that they got. So let's put some test scores. Maybe they got 100, a 90, an 80. Oh my gosh, they got a 48. That's terrible. 78 and 84, I think it was. So they're not in any particular order. This is just the order that they took the tests. Now, notice that I did not need to put anything in terms of, or anything in quotes. These are all numbers. None of them are strings. Now, we're going to use a little trick here. We're going to say the minimum grade is 110. And you'll see why. For most teachers, why I picked 110. Most teachers, the highest you're going to get on a test is 100. However, occasionally a teacher might be nice, and I've already done this, where I'll make the max, I'll give a few, like a little curve, and say, okay, maybe I'll bump the maximum up to 102. So if you got everything right, you get 102. Or if you got everything right, or there was a bonus question, you could get 105. I picked 110, figuring most teachers aren't going to go above 110. Maybe they're really, really nice. Maybe Ms. Kojal or Mr. Saba would do that, but I probably wouldn't go above 110. I probably wouldn't even go that high. So I'm going to say for score, for the particular test score in grades. So what that's going to do is it's going to go through each one of these things and call them score. I'm going to say if the score is less than the minimum grade. So for example, 100 is less than 110. So now we'll say, well, now the minimum grade is that new score. Now the next one is 90. Well, 90 would be less than 100, so now the minimum score will be 90. We'll keep going. But once it gets to 48, it's going to set that as the minimum score. Then it's going to make some comparisons and say, no, these ones are all bigger than that. Maybe we'll put some spaces in just for clarity. But those last two are bigger than 48, so it won't do that. And then we'll say print the grade that failed at life was, comma, mini. And don't forget to end parentheses. And if everything works, then everything's going to work. And let's see what happens. And it did. Now, the reason it's nice to use for score in grades rather than like for I in range is, let's say we take another test. And this is terrible. The student just said, I'm a senior, I don't care anymore. And they got a 12. I don't need to change anything else in my program. Because it's not like going for I in range. It's just trying to deal with it however long. Now, let's do a two-dimensional array. because this one-dimensional array, it's good to see it again. It's good to get extra practice with lists, but we want to do something a little bit more complex. So let's see, this program prints names and ages. So let's create, we're going to call it my array. You can't use the word array because array is a reserved word. Now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a list here. That's how we start a list. I'm going to say Johann is a name, and I'm going to put his grade or his age in. He's 16. Now I can keep going on the same line, but I don't want to do that. I'm going to put a comma, and let's put Ludwig. These are the names of famous composers. Johann Sebastian Bach and Ludwig von Beethoven. And Clara Schumann, I should say. And let's say she was 19. And these aren't real ages. These are just make-up names, like pretending they were in my class. So what's unique here, what we did was, we have two pieces of information. We actually have a list of lists. These outer parentheses are one list. Then I have smaller lists inside, and they can be any size, which we're going to see in a few minutes. So now the question is, well, how do I print all that? So let's say for person, since they're a person in my array, we want to do something. We want to print person 0 and person 1. Now what's that doing? So for person in my array, so it'll go to my array and take the first person. Now when I print, you notice there's two things in that list. Person sub 0, 0 is the first spot. That's their first name. Person sub 1 is the second spot. In this case, we're calling that their age. So let's save that and give it a run. Yep, and it does that. Now, let's try a little bit of different here, little difference. Let's change it up a little bit. It's going to be basically the same program. But let's suppose we want to also print their classes. So maybe Johann is in chemistry with me. Maybe Ludwig is in physics. And STEM programming. And maybe I had Clara for chemistry. I'm hoping all my quotes are right. Physics. And she also took the STEM programming. And let me just make this consistent up here. It'll only take a second. So notice I had Johann for one course. I had Ludwig for 2 courses. And Clara for 3. So now I want to print these. How am I going to do this? So I'm going to say for each person in the array, so the first person will be Johann. Oh, and what do we want to call this? Let's say we'll just call it item because I don't know what else to call it, for item in person. Print the item. Let's put some spaces in. I'm going to comma. I'm going to link this. So what do I want? Keep messing up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I could have also put a tab in there. Maybe we'll do that another time. And then we'll print, or we'll do end equals nothing. Now you might say, what's that end equals nothing? What that does is that suppresses the end of a line. So what it's going to do is it'll just keep everything on the line. And we might see some different ways to do that maybe in the next video. Let's just finish this one up for today. And let's print a blank line in there. You could use the new line character, but just as easy to do this. Now let's see what it does. Oops, it spaced it out weirdly, didn't it? Clara. It went crazy with Clara. Where did it go wrong with Clara? Oh, here's the problem. I didn't have my... And notice when I put the brackets, it gives me that gray box for a second there. I didn't have my gray box right. Let's see it again. Yeah, there we go. Now it looks pretty good. We would probably want to clean up and maybe use some formatting because you can see the way the lines are. They're all jagged like that. But the point that we want to make here is for person in my array, we're picking up this first list. Then for item in person, picks up each of the individual items in here. And this is important because they don't have to be the same length. Johan's entry is 3 items long. Ludwig is 4, and Clara is 5, and it works just fine.